That is a huge decision for the government to make. For the cases that I saw in person, they were not severe.
But what are some of the flaws that you think, or some things that we could improve on, maybe within the Canadian healthcare system?
Canadians are so proud of our system because we're better than the States. That's all we care about. There's a lot of mystery with regards to what a family doctor is supposed to do. The inner machinations of the healthcare system are so nebulous, they're so mysterious that...
Are people taking advantage of the fact that we have free healthcare? Are they scared and they're rushing to the doctor for anything? What do you think on that matter?
The professional boundaries get blurry, right? How are you going to know that they're doing bad medicine?
Just a few things that people might come in for that you say, I wish we knew more about this. You can enter medical school on a music degree, like you said, for one example. Do you think that that's a problem?
It feels like a movie when the farm rep comes to you.
How important is happiness to you?
And I think it's not a good goal. I think it's not a sustainable goal.
Alrighty, welcome back, guys, to our fourth guest now on the show of Hora del Mate, Mr. Chilean Lothar Nunez. I'm not sure if he has his own mate or not, but with him, we're going to do things a little differently. Although we are going to speak about happiness because he is actually a physician. He's a doctor back in Toronto. He's going to speak a little bit about the situation that the world is facing right now and just kind of his perspective on everything and what he thinks. Before I go on to ask him any questions, Mr. Lothar Nunez, tell us a little bit about yourself so everyone gets to know who you are exactly.
Sure. My name's Lothar. Professionally, I'm Dr. Nunez Vitella, but Lothar is how you've known me my whole life. I was born and raised in Toronto. My parents are Latino. That's how you and I know each other. My dad's Chilean, your dad's Argentinian. So constantly fighting. We were brought up in North York, very multicultural neighborhood. And I went to Western for 9 years. I went to Western for undergrad and medical school, and then U of T for my 2 years of family medicine residency. So I've been practicing as a family doctor for 1 year now in downtown Toronto, and I'm also currently training to become an addictions doctor.
Very good. Obviously, not everyone that sets out their objectives like that can complete the path. I'm sure it can be hectic at times with all the studying, with all the schooling you have to do. How long in total were you studying before you actually became licensed?
It was 11 years.
11 years. Jeez.
11 years, yeah.
There's a reason, I guess, that you're qualified to give some of the information that maybe some of us think we know, and then, or with our Google research, and then when we approach someone like yourself, it becomes more of a scholarly source, if you will. Now, Lothar, obviously, yeah, we've known each other for a very long time, so we're comfortable having these kinds of conversations. And the idea is that when, on the second part of what we're going to talk about here, with the happiness, people can kind of reflect on what we say and maybe find some sort of comfort or guidance in that. Before we get into that, the world is obviously facing this huge crisis going on, the coronavirus. I'm experiencing it here in Auckland, New Zealand. My girlfriend arrived a week before lockdown happened. It took her almost 6 hours to get into the country. I was waiting outside the airport in my roommate's car. Just complete hell broke loose. We've done a good job of containing it, I'd say. The government did. We had 4 different levels of lockdown. We're currently in level 1, which is basically just open market now. And we actually recently just got a few cases. We have, I think, 2 new cases now because they had let in a couple of people from the UK to a funeral here. And then apparently they I don't know if they brought the virus over with them, but we were at 0 cases per day for about 18 days. And now we're back up to 2-3 cases. Now, what was your experience like of the coronavirus? Not just, first of all, not just as a doctor, but as just an individual living in Toronto.
Sure. So it was a very personal experience for me because I had just moved into my first apartment to live on my own. So I was like, yes, this is going to be the summer of Lothar, and I'm going to have a great time, and I'm going to have a nice, I live by the harbour front, so it's a very outdoorsy neighborhood in Toronto. So that didn't happen, of course. We all had to stay self-contained. You didn't get to see any of your friends, and So that was difficult. It was difficult, but at the same time, I'm gonna miss it a little bit because I think everybody went through something kind of similar. If you do live alone, you got a lot of time, like maybe more time you've ever had in your life to reflect and think about your life and basically process all the shit that you've been going through. In Toronto and I think most other big cities, people are on the go 24/7. Like it just never stops. Like you're just constantly working at some goal, and you never really get a chance to sit down and digest it all. So I think that gave us an opportunity to do that, and I think in a way it was quite healthy for all of us. Yeah.
That is a good way of looking at it. I would say you have the time to yourself, especially in a city. It's so go, 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 go. And, everyone wants to make money and work. And I guess it's kind of required by the system that we live in. Some of us, obviously, or some people did experience it on a more negative note. So much time alone, contained within one space, either if they were self-isolating or doing it alone or with a group of friends. People have some anxiety of being stuck in a house or being away from family or so forth. So I can imagine that there are both positives and negatives of the situation. Now, on a more, I wouldn't say general note, but it's more directed towards the virus itself and containment. Now, we had 4 levels here. Did Canada have anything like that? Did they have? Because I wasn't too aware. I mean, I was speaking to my parents, but I wasn't too sure how they did it. Did they have levels of lockdown?
Yes. So we have stages. I'm not well versed in them at all, and it seems like as regimented as we wish to be, the public has their own agenda and the government has their own agenda. We are reopening in a graduated fashion for sure. My niece is going to daycare tomorrow, and that is a huge decision for the government to make because, as everyone who has a kid knows, that daycare is the cesspool of viruses. So it's a big step for Canada. I would say we were at our most severe lockdown around 1 month ago, where we knew very little about the virus and we weren't sure how well we were going to be able to contain it. But to answer your question, yes, there was a stage-like opening and we're currently starting to reopen.
Okay, so yeah, I guess the daycare is a big step, as you said, to contain with all the kids getting together and the parents bringing them in. There's a lot of movement going on. How, as a physician, how did this affect you? So were you, at what point or until what point were you working? Did you have to deal with any cases of people coming in and not knowing what the sickness was? Were any of them directly related to the virus?
Right, yeah. So I don't know how much I'm allowed to say here for patient confidentiality, but I certainly had encounters that were quite close to me. Let's say it was feels like a blur now. When did this all begin? Was it 2 months? 2 months ago, things started to really change. So I'm a family doctor. I work in a clinic setting. So I don't work in a hospital. I work in a clinic. And I did have some cases that I needed to send to get assessed. But our clinic, because because we have to protect the general public and we have to protect ourselves, we have very strict screening guidelines. So people that came in were first telephone screened to make sure that they didn't have any symptoms, that they didn't have any close contact with anyone with a acute respiratory illness. So they were referred to the emergency department or the COVID assessment centers when they finally got set up. So we did quite heavy pre-screening before we saw anybody, but even with that, we did see some cases. Yes.
What is acute? What is acute respiratory? What was it? Acute respiratory. What kind of falls into that segment? Like, for example, I have bronchitis. Does that fall inside that? What's the word I'm looking for? Does it fall inside acute respiratory? Whatever you would. How did you phrase it?
Acute respiratory illness. So it's a bit of a
Does that fall?
it's a bit of an umbrella term, but essentially it means um, anyone who's quite short of breath, usually has a fever, uh, you know, dyspnea, which means difficulty breathing, coughing. Basically, if you can picture if someone who has like a bad pneumonia, like shortness of breath, fever, bad cough, yeah, that kind of thing.
And besides, so obviously stepping away from what you did, what your work required you to do, any friends of yours, were they diagnosed with anything? Do you know anyone specifically that had the virus? I know, for example, my girlfriend's friends dealt with it and they said it was pretty bad.
So again, I because of patient confidentiality, I can tell you that yes, there are people I knew that had the virus. Very scary experience for them. It affected their personal, professional life, of course. So yeah.
Okay, and what about just what it entails? So comparing the coronavirus, COVID-19, to your everyday flu, based on what you know just off of the illness itself, off the disease, or the virus, excuse me, how different is it?
Right. So I can sense that you're trying to ask me to risk stratify this disease, and I can only if you want me to speak to you anecdotally, for the cases that I saw in person, they were not severe. They were not severe. They were something akin to a cold, mild symptoms.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I asked is because, like I said, someone we know did get the virus, and they were just saying that it didn't last too long. I think the symptoms lasted about a day and a half, and they were just extreme symptoms. Like in their case, they, throwing up all night, horrible headaches, and worse than the flu. But I understand that people experience it at different levels. Even family members of mine think they had gotten it, but they didn't experience almost anything. It was like a very mild cold. And so they didn't even go to the hospital. They didn't go see anyone. So I guess in my head, it's just kind of wondering what the government is qualifying as viruses. Like there are so many people that are probably infected that haven't gone checked, and they may as well have it or not. And it brings about questions to my head about what's going to happen here in New Zealand, because obviously, like I said, the cases started up again. So it's quite difficult to know. We're living in a very uncertain moment, I guess. Now, here in New Zealand, we have something called accident compensation, which basically means if you're a tourist in New Zealand, or you don't have your visa, or even if you do and you get hurt while being here, say you fall, you hit your head, there's so many things that are covered within the accident insurance claim here in New Zealand, which makes it a very good option for tourists. Even if you don't want to travel, for example, I came without travel insurance. Some people do. It depends how much you want to spend. It can give you so many options. Canada doesn't. I don't think they have anything like that, do they? Do you know about anything similar?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything.
I have no idea. If someone's traveling to Canada, do we have like a safety net for them?
Yeah, essentially. So, for example, say they were walking off a plane or they got hurt, or who knows, are they covered at all? Do they have to pay their expenses? I haven't heard of anything like that in Canada. That's why I'm surprised by seeing it here in New Zealand. It's such a good policy.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now, before we get into that whole wellness of the mindset and whatnot, because we talked a little bit about the virus, I want to talk a little bit about just the way Canadian healthcare works. For those people that are watching that are not in Canada, if you are a resident of Canada, you've basically, for Ontario, within our province, you have free healthcare. I sometimes get upset. I've told you this before in confidence, that sometimes you go to you remember the story. Sometimes you go to a doctor and I had an osteitis pubis, which was a microfracture of my pubic bone. And I went to the doctor and they told me that I had an ab strain, just my family physician, and to rest. I rested 3 weeks. It made the matters a lot worse. And then I went to a sports doctor and they gave me an MRI, and eventually they told me that I had the osteitis pubis, and I was in 3 months of therapy, physiotherapy, and then 4 months of rest, and then finally I got better. So I guess my question to you would be, maybe this might be difficult to answer, obviously, because you're part of the whole system, but what are some of the flaws that you think, or some things that we could improve on, maybe within the Canadian healthcare system, or provincial, if you will?
Yeah, because of the shifting landscape that COVID has brought to us, my thoughts on how medicine has been changing has been purely COVID-centered recently, but certainly we don't have a perfect system. Canadians are so proud of our system because we're better than the States. That's all we care about, Are we better than the States? That's not I don't think that's a good metric. If you get a heart attack in the States, you lose your house, right? Like this is a terrible bar to want to surpass. Certainly we have flaws, certainly. There are so many, I don't even know where I can begin and where do we even start? Let me think.
Yeah, just if anything has come to your mind, like have you experienced something, even as a patient before you went through all this, maybe you have some recollection of something you went through or you could have thought the situation would have been better if different policies were in place?
Something I don't like about being a doctor and being a patient in the Canadian healthcare system is how much mystery there is. There's a lot of mystery with regards to what a family doctor is supposed to do, what a specialist is supposed to do, what a patient can expect from a family doctor. Like the inner machinations of the healthcare system are so nebulous, they're so mysterious that even a lot of doctors don't know how the medical system works. Like it is a machine with so many moving parts. But if we could educate the public a little bit better, a pamphlet here, a handout there, maybe even at my office we could just offer a little handout to explain a little bit about the medical system. It's actually, now that I'm talking about it, it's something that we definitely should be doing, just to explain what you can expect a family doctor does, because it's very different, and from region to region, even from the central core of downtown to the outer GTA, the responsibilities and expectations of a family doctor are totally different. So yes, education and awareness is completely lacking from our medical system, because system navigation, the social work, basically the sphere of social work in itself is designed to help navigate a patient through the very complicated system of health in Canada. So
that's interesting. I like that point. I'm very big on educating. The more you can absorb, the more knowledge you can absorb, the better, especially when it comes to systematic processes and step-by-step of how to do things. I find I was doing my immigration, or my visa here in New Zealand, and it was, at some points it was really simple, like some things I admired about the way they set it up, and at other points I was extremely lost and confused, and I was reaching out to people and no one could give me answers on how to do things. I had to do my medical here as well, and so forth. And I wish there were procedures set in place that kind of helped me understand before I made payments of what was expected, right? Now, you said it's different from, and it's good that we're getting a perspective of someone who actually works within the system rather than just someone who's there every now and then. You said that it's different within the core of Toronto and the suburbs of Toronto, if you will, in Ontario. Is that based on accessibility? So say, for example, you need to go to a doctor, but you live in, Britt, a little small town in Ontario, and you have to go to the doctor, so she might have to have a general knowledge of more things. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, so basically the difference between a city doctor and a country doctor, if they're both family doctors, the country doc is more like a cowboy. That's what they call themselves. They deliver babies, they go to the hospital and do some internal medicine. They can work in the palliative care unit with no extra training. They can do minor surgeries. If you're rural enough, your family doctor does it all, basically. They do the whole thing because of accessibility. That's exactly it. Because if the family doctor doesn't do it, like, good luck getting a specialist, like, to fly out here, wherever you are. Of course, that's an extreme example. That's like in the very tiny town in like Northern Ontario. But that's the spectrum, right? Like, you do so much, and then the closer you get to the core, it's not that you do less, you do a different kind of job. So the patients that we have around here have different issues, like inner city issues, right? So a lot of socioeconomic status issues,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that are vulnerably housed. The LGBTQ community in like tend to go to big cities where they feel safer, and so we see a lot more of that. A lot more. Well, I can't say drug use is particularly worse in the city, but it's definitely a big problem in this one. So in essence, you become more specialized if you work in the core, and then you have to be like good at many more things if you work in the country.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. There's so many issues we can touch upon here. You brought to light one of them, just educating the public. The other one I just want to bring to light, just maybe not necessarily any negative things, but when you do, for example, it's pretty easy to get an ultrasound done in Ontario. For me, it has been. Maybe even an X-ray. Now, when it comes to MRIs, well, obviously we talk first. Let's talk a little bit about, to the extent that we know about it, that you might know about it. First of all, radiation. It's a type of radiation. How necessary is it? Because I know a lot of people go in and they want MRIs for absolutely anything, and they make the waiting list even longer just because they have a little, scratch, just to put it lightly. But how bad, first of all, do you think the radiation is for you from an MRI? And when do you realize that it's necessary for you to do it because the injury is so bad?
The MRI does not give radiation.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
The CT scan does. So will give you radiation, and the MRI won't. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. There's if you want to order a CT scan for somebody, it is a sizable amount. It's about the amount of radiation you would get from a 7-hour, like a transatlantic flight. I forget the numbers on this, but it would increase your lifetime cancer risk by, certainly less than 1%, but it is there. It is there.
That's for the CT scan, correct?
Yeah.
And
an MRI does not cause radiation.
Okay, that's good that you corrected me, because see, someone like me, I wouldn't know that. Maybe other viewers will know that. So if it doesn't cause radiation, now let's talk about the other point that I touched on is when you do need an MRI, often you find that I've been sent for an MRI for some things that maybe they were necessary, but when I had to see the physician after, they kind of just, they let it go without actually telling me what it was, because it wasn't anything serious. And that extends the waiting list process. Sometimes you're waiting over 3 months, I think. Luckily, because I played competitive sports, they kind of helped me, and they would send in a request and it would be done in a couple of weeks. Are people taking advantage of the fact that we have free healthcare? Are they scared and they're rushing to the doctor for anything? What do you think on that matter?
It's a very good question, honestly, and I'm glad you asked me that. And I'm going to try not to say anything racist here, because this can easily go there.
Okay.
But there's a spectrum again. So there's patients that abuse the healthcare system, and they go in for every little thing, and they clog up the emergency waiting room. And there's other patients that they come too late. They come too late, and that ends up also costing the healthcare system too much. So, so it's difficult, because the first triage that's done for a patient is their own sense of how healthy they are. The first triage is the patient's own thoughts about their illness. So for a schizophrenic person, they might not think they're ill when they really, really are, and they really need their medication. For a person who has anxiety and gets chest pain with their anxiety, they might come in once a week to the emergency department just to make sure they're not having a heart attack.
Right.
So it's a very good question. The reason I bring up race, and it's actually, it's more complicated than that, but I was about to take over a Latino practice, so I speak Spanish reasonably well, and there's not a lot of Spanish family docs, but when the patient population is your own ethnicity, the professional boundaries get blurry, right? So they think their family, they think you're going to give them the VIP service, so right. They come in for everything. They think because it's free, they come in for a lot of things, and they should. Um, I have heard that the Korean population is the opposite. That they really don't complain. They don't come in unless they have to, and when they do come in, it's straight to the point. Like one thing, and that's a doctor's dream. Yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying. Especially, I don't. If anyone was to ever say this was a racist thing, I would defend it to the very last bone, because I myself am Argentinian. My mom's from Ecuador. My dad's from Argentina. I speak Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish and English, so I have a very good sense of culture, if you will, especially within Toronto. And it's generalizations, stereotypes. They come from somewhere. As a Latino, we know that we're going to try to take advantage of the system. But that's just the way the country works. If someone's going to sit there and say it's racist, we're going to be like, no, unfortunately, that's not the case. It's just that's where it stems from. So I see definitely what you're saying with that. I had a question I wanted to ask you. Kind of lost my train of thought. But no, yeah, I definitely see why you even would be worried to say something like that. But, you know, it makes sense for sure. That's what I was going to ask you. So now, because there are people that are coming in and kind of want to see if they can get, you know, maybe something free here or whatnot, are you consistently scrutinized? Are they checking up on you? How does that work as a doctor?
Right. So we're self-regulated, which is a luxury that doctors have, and also a necessity, because nobody can evaluate another doctor as well as another doctor, right? If you don't know medicine, then how are you going to know that they're doing bad medicine? So we are scrutinized by our own college itself. It's called the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. So they do random audits. When you write your notes at the end of the day and you're charting away, it's a legal document that you're writing, thinking that one day a lawyer from the CPSO who's working with another doctor that works with the CPSO is going to be looking at this document. So yes, we feel the constant spirit of the CPSO in the room watching over our shoulder. So it's definitely something that we care about a lot.
Which is good to know, because especially even if people that are, you know, everyday users that go to the doctor consistently, they can kind of see this and say, reflect from your point of view and the pressures you face. And we'll get into the pressures in just a second, because there's something else I want to bring to light here. Before I do that, is there 11 years of schooling? 2 questions. Is there something that, obviously cancer is the big one, but just a few things that people might come in for that you say, I wish we knew more about this to help you out? Not personally, because we'll get to that personally, what you didn't study in school, but what, as doctors, what is it that, and it doesn't have to be anything. Obviously, we know cancer is, you know, we don't know as much as we should, perhaps, or as much as we might know in the future. But what else is there that, so people stop asking you questions that you don't know the answer to, you know?
That's a good question. Perhaps I'm spoiled because my patients are the type to Google their symptoms, and that's kind of a drag. But at the same time, here in the city, they're quite medically literate. So they come to me with a lot of knowledge already, and that sometimes is quite nice. What I don't think people know enough about is exercise. So exercising in general, just a bit of exercise, 5 minutes a day, a little jog, is so beneficial. So, for instance, probably a lot of people don't know that if you take a 15-minute walk after lunch, it significantly reduces your hemoglobin A1C, which is the marker for diabetes. So just a quick walk after lunch brings your blood sugar down to a safer level for Canadians. So that's one of the many unknown things that we don't know about exercise. It has huge implications with regards to mental health, joint health, muscle health. We know that if you exercise regularly between the ages of 40 and 70, that your musculature will not age. It'll just stay the same. And our dads are a testament to that. Like, our dads run around like they're young men, because they've been playing soccer like regularly for like 50 years. Yeah.
And your dad's a little bit older than mine, and he looks like we play football, soccer together, and we bring guys that are 20 years old, and your dad, with one little movement, I don't know how old your dad is, probably past 60. At one of those movements,
Yeah.
he already, he looks like he's 20 years old, and you're like, how is it possible? Of course, he exercises every week, almost every day,
The key is to be regular, and it seems like exercising once a week. So if you're in a soccer league once a week, this is when you get injured. This is when you start to feel the injuries happen, because you're lazy the whole week and then you go hard for the one day, and that's when my patients come in and say like, my back or my ankle. So yeah, just the benefits of the blood sugar, the mental health, the bone health, the cardiovascular health. It's amazing. If you're not exercising, you really should be.
And consistency, I guess. So consistency is what you're aiming for, rather than once every now and in the blue moon, if you will. Now, again, this is going to take a little longer than I thought, because we're unpacking a lot of things here, and I like this conversation. I like where it's going. Before I get to that question of pressure that you're facing and the well-being and your mindset, nutrition, a few things we're going to talk about, what is it that, the second part of that question, that you went to school for 11 years, is there something that you can't get your finger around to say, I can tell you enough about this, or is there something you didn't study enough that maybe it's not your fault, but the fault of the way the system is set up?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So, for example, you went 11 years of schooling. I've never studied medicine. I don't know what that entails. But is there anything that they didn't teach you enough of?
Oh, yeah. Like, so much.
Okay, so exactly. So what is one of those examples you can easily say, and not just that they didn't teach you, but you think that they should be teaching you more of?
Okay, so let me break this down a bit. Okay.
So
the 11 years sounds like if you spend 11 years studying any one thing, you'd be a master at it, but that's not how it works. So The 5 years are undergrad, so not everyone does a 5-year undergrad. Some people do 2 years of undergrad, and they get into medical school. Most people do 4. My undergrad did happen to be in medical sciences, but you can come from a music degree, a dance degree, as long as you did certain prerequisites in certain science courses. Chemistry, physics, biology, that kind of thing. Then 4 years of medical school. So these are basically, you do rotations month to month. Different schools do it differently, but in general, you start on one organ system, and then another organ system, and then another. So you do heart for a month or two, and then brain, and then you start in the classroom, and then you work your way into the clinic, the hospital, the OR. So that's 4 years of that, and then after those 4 years, you specialize. So I chose family medicine, and that happened to be 2 years, which is, of course, the most general of all the medical specialties. So is there one thing that I wasn't taught very well? Doctors aren't taught much about nutrition, and that might be because it might be the nature of nutrition, and that it's a very pendulous science, and that some days carbs are good, some days carbs are bad. Sometimes fats are good, sometimes fats are bad. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's because hard evidence in nutrition is seemingly difficult to get a grasp of. It really is. It really is. So I think patients think that we know a lot about nutrition, and we don't. We just don't learn about it. We refer to nutritionists or dietitians.
So 2 questions come to light in what you put it in, what you said there, to unpack. The first one would be, you can enter medical school on a music degree, like you said, for one example. Do you think that that's a problem? Should you have a background in something more specific?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. And I think that if you take the prerequisite courses, so you do 1 year of bio, 1 year of chem, 1 year of physics, it's enough. It's enough to get you started in the beginning of medical school. I think that to be a doctor, you don't need to be a science nerd. You don't need to be like a person that's in their books all the time. It's okay if you have hobbies outside of medicine. In fact, it's preferred. So when you go in for your medical school interview, it's often advised that you speak about your extracurricular hobbies to show them that you do have a life outside of medicine, because that is a good indicator that you will not experience burnout, physician burnout. Yeah, so if you have some sort of way to de-stress, if you happen to be a dancer or an artist, it's a good outlet to have. Yeah.
I like that answer, because I'm very big on, if you're passionate about something, you're probably going to do it well, because you bring all your energy you have, everyday stresses, and you put it into that one craft. And I think if you're a physician, if you're a doctor, if you're specialized, and you're passionate about helping people, because that's what your doctors are there for. You're there to help people. If you're passionate about that, then you'll do a good job at that, no matter what your background is, because you can learn. You're always learning consistently in anything you do. And so that begs the question, who's in it because they're passionate, they want to help people, and who's in it for ulterior motives, and how much pressure do you face? This is a question I wanted to ask you earlier. How much pressure do you face from pharmaceutical reps, from people that want you to sell products?
Thank you. Good, very good questions. So medicine is a very, very interesting specialty, and the reason I bring it up is because there's a personality trait known as agreeableness. So agreeable people are compassionate and kind, and if you're very agreeable, people might call you a doormat. You might be too accommodating. You might have a hard time standing up for yourself. If you're too disagreeable, people might call you a critical, harsh, critical, too honest jerk kind of person, and you love competition if you're on this side. You see other people as potential vanquished opponents in a competition, in the grand competition of life. So to be a clinician, you should be agreeable. You should have compassion. You should have patience with the patients that you see, and you should be able to empathize with them easily, regularly, all day for your whole life. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, people that get into medicine should be also competitive. You should also be competitive, because it is you that must strive to make the system better. It is you that must compete with your fellow pre-med students to get into medical school, and it's you that has to compete for the research grants so that you can move medicine forward for the future. So the personalities that come to medicine, you get a mixed bag. You get a mixed bag. Some people seem to be in it for purely because out of the goodness of their hearts, and some people are in it because they want to be the best at something. And I can tell you that even though there's a big spectrum, they all seem to be morally in the right place. So they all, even if they're not naturally kind, they know that the right thing to do is listen to the patient and treat them fairly, like a human being. So I haven't seen one colleague really. I know there are bad apples out there, but in my experience, I haven't seen even one colleague who I thought really shouldn't be a doctor. They're quite impressive. My colleagues are quite impressive people. Very, very humbling to be around these kinds of people.
That's amazing to hear. Obviously, as a Canadian, it's really good to hear, and an Ontarian, if you will. And especially from you, I know you're really sincere, and I know that you're open in that sense, so it's good to hear. What about the pressure you face from, I think they're called pharmaceutical reps that want to sell medicine, right? They come in and say, here's so forth. We've seen it in movies, so it's a question I don't want to avoid, because it's something that I'm interested in learning more about.
Sure. It feels like a movie when the pharm rep comes to you. You feel like it's like a theater. Like, it's a hot girl, like a tall blonde girl, who comes to you and says, "Hey, do you have a minute for lunch? I'd like to talk to you about this drug that we're selling. I brought a free lunch for you. Why don't we talk?" And it's so overly sexualized that I'm like, come on, at least be subtle, at least look. Um,
They try to fit into the societal standard of hot, because for me, blonde and tall is useless because my girlfriend's not even blonde and she's not tall and I'm short. So,
yeah,
well,
I'm
5'7",
speaking,
not too bad.
I'm speaking in generalities, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, this is why I wanted to clearly make sure that we understood that. But
Of course, yeah.
like a movie, that's good to understand from your point of view, because that's probably so tough to deal with.
Well, I well, there are medical schools in Canada. McMaster is one of them that they just don't deal with farm reps. They're called farm reps. These people that come to you and try to get you in the habit of prescribing one of their drugs, so that forever after you're prescribing their drug in their brand name. Um, so some medical schools just don't let them in their like practicing facilities. So I'm like that. I don't talk to them. I don't. Yeah, I don't speak with them. Because I know, because when I was in residency, a farm rep that was retired came to speak with us, and they're like, it's an old guy, kind of a straight talker, straight shooter. He's like, so, so you guys think that your opinions are solid, and you think you're morally strong, but it turns out one burrito can buy your opinion. Like he showed us the data, and he showed that like just one lunch can change a doctor's prescribing patterns, and it really is that easy. Yeah.
Interesting.
Not that, and I mean to say this as a disclaimer. So they might change which brand of drug we use. They won't change which drug we use. So it's not like we're going to give you worse care, but we're going to choose this drug over that one.
Hold that thought. Okay, so you brought to light a little bit about the pressures that you face regarding farm reps, as you call them. It's something, I think there's more to unpack. There's a lot to talk about. I want to get into a little bit now, the mindset, the well-being of it all, because that's what the segment's about. But there's so much to talk about. So I know, just so you know, in the future, we're going to have you back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about all this stuff. Now, mindset and well-being. I'm someone who, I like to meditate. I like to read when I can, obviously, or make the time for it. I put all my energy into soccer because I can express myself like that. I'm very positive and proactive in the way I live. I think I'm generally a happy person. And I haven't said this before, but happiness to me is a choice. Every day you wake up, and it's not that you get a feeling and you decide, okay, this is how I'm going to live out my life. You wake up and you say, today I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be positive. These are the things that are going on in my life that are so beautiful that I can appreciate. And I know I have a very good sense of who I am outside of the body that I use every day. That's how I like to phrase it, because if I woke up tomorrow and I lived in a different body, the person in me, would still be happy. So how important, first of all, let's step into the individuality. So aside from what you do, how important is happiness to you?
I can tell you that it used to be much more important to me. Yeah, there were times in my life that were quite dark. I can say that showed me that mental health is certainly very important, and it spurred my own interest into being more interested in the mental health of my patients. So of course it's important. But happiness, I feel like, is a little bit overrated. I honestly believe it's a little bit overrated, because people say, I want to be happy. My goal in life is happiness. And I think it's not a good goal. I think it's not a sustainable goal. I think it's an emotion. It's a state of mind that certainly should be appreciated and nurtured as much as you can. But I think that if you use it as your main goal in life, you're going to have a difficult time. I think that your goal in life should be something more along the lines of meaningfulness. So if you find something that you find meaningful, that if you have a goal that excites you, like you're doing this YouTube interview because you want to spread messages to your audience, I consider that a very meaningful goal, and I applaud you for it. I think it's great. Um, and I think that that's more accurate to say that this YouTube channel brings you happiness. I think it's more accurate to say that it brings you meaning, because one day something tragic might happen to you. As we all know, life goes up and down, out of our control. You know, things just happen. But if you have something that you find meaningful, then it'll sustain you through the difficult times, and you'll enjoy the happy times more.
That's an interesting perspective, very interesting, because we haven't actually gotten. A lot of people have tried to. The people we've interviewed have touched on their side of that, and no one has said it like that. And I guess, what I would say is that it depends too on definitions, right? Because what have you experienced the word happy to be in your life, and what have I experienced the word happy to be in my life? Maybe, for example, in my happiness, I include meaningfulness, but for you, they're two different terms. So, and end goal is important too. For me, like the YouTube channel, I appreciate the comment, by the way. The YouTube channel thing is something that I use because I want to make a change in the people that can see these videos, in the sense, or not make a change, help them with guidance or with comfort. And even if it's things that we're all figuring out together, it's important to shed light on what they're dealing with and speak about it and bring it to the open, so it's not sitting within them. And what I mean, I guess, by happiness is that if the YouTube channel didn't work out, or if I was playing football here and something unfortunate happened, or what, God knows what happened, I don't take the superficial, what I mean by the superficial is what I use my body for, too seriously, because I could go anywhere and appreciate anything and still be in a positive state. And I think that what helped me get there, a word you used earlier as a physician, is empathy. You empathize with other people. I like to, because of social media, we live comparative lives, I think, or those of us that use it. And what we compare our lives to is often, it depends if it's proactive or not. Because if you're following some accounts, you've proactively chosen to follow those accounts without either purposely, because we realize the effect that they'll have on us and they'll give us goals, for example, or not proactively, and what you see affects you. I like to compare myself with everyone, not just what I see, and I say, oh, look how much I have. Like, I can sit in an apartment that I think is beautiful with, talking to my friend who I think is a beautiful person. I have a beautiful life, and I can compare it to what others don't have, maybe. I guess I didn't really bring that anywhere, but just kind of shedding light what I thought, what that whole happiness entails, because it's a big word in general. Did you hear where I'm coming from? Yeah. But I agree that meaningfulness is a big part of it as well.
What I'm hearing is that you're good at appreciating what you have. So the big difference is social media makes you hate what you have and envy other people, and the mindset that you choose to have is to kind of say, that's not good, I'm just going to appreciate what I have, which I think is a rare choice that we have. It's one of the few choices you can make to really make yourself happier, make yourself less stressed, more appreciative, more happy. Yeah.
Is mindset a choice?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that. I believe some people are naturally more negative, more emotionally sensitive, more volatile than others. I think some people are more naturally extroverted, happy. They want to explore the world. They want to see new things. And some people are a little more withdrawn. But no matter who you are, I think that you have a choice to make. And everyone can make their life better through their own volition. Yeah, I believe that.
Okay, so I would ask you, who are you? Who is Lothar? Who are you?
I would say that I'm someone that really loves adventure. I believe that I'm the happiest, and I feel like my life has the most meaning when I'm on an adventure, when I'm exploring something new, when I'm meeting new people. An adventure can be on a walk down, in a nice conversation, an adventure can be in a walk down the park. So I would say I'm an explorer. I love exploring new things, and I love meeting new people and seeing new things.
And are you proactively seeking adventure in your life?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I had many travel plans, of course.
Yeah, we spoke about that as well.
I did. But one thing, because I'm not as extroverted as you. Extroverts, they love to be out there, but introverts, not that I'm purely an introvert, but people that lean more to that side, uh, I feel like their way of exploring is art. So they love to explore the world through the minds of other people, like art. And so when I'm not meeting people, I love to catch up on classic cinema. So I love the fact that some movies have survived like the crazy revolution of movie making, and because they have an important message to say. I recently watched classics: Godfather, Lawrence of Arabia, Casablanca, Top Hat. I I I recently watched them, and I love that stuff. I love exploring new art. Yeah.
You see, I've only watched one of the ones you named, obviously The Godfather, and I like that you say that because I'm extroverted, I would say, and obviously, I mean, you kind of have to do, or you have to find a way to be if you're doing something like this. I think music is the same way. Music survives. Like I watch videos today. I was watching a band called the Tremolos. Who? Yeah, the Tremolos. They sing a song called "Here Comes My Baby," and I just watch and I look at the messages of what they're saying in their content from so way beyond when we were born, and even just the way they sing the songs, that the joy that they have in their faces is something I perhaps don't see today as much, or at least what's thrown out to me, because I don't know, maybe they have different motives for making music or whatnot, but it's hard to find. So I appreciate old music. I love old music, and old movies as well. Godfather being, classic. Yeah. So it's an interesting point that you bring to light there. So I'm very proud, by the way, of who you've. We've known each other. You're young, you're older than me, but you're proud of who you've become and what you're doing, and the fact that you're helping people. And God only knows where you'll take it from there. There was something else I wanted to ask you. I keep losing my train of thought here. It's just so beautiful outside. No, I guess that's mostly everything I wanted to ask you. And I'm sure this was probably not the easiest thing sometimes to talk about, because you're kind of being really vulnerable. I know what I wanted to ask you. Sorry. You said that you had some dark moments in your life.
Yes.
Now, of course, you don't have to talk about them if you don't want to, but the purpose of this is that we talk about it, because it's important that you probably have done it with friends and family, and you bring it out, outside of you. Is there anything you can share about anything you've gone through and how you overcame that?
Certainly. Yeah, I'm happy to explain that. I'll try to be brief here. So, I was in my undergrad, so I was 18, 19, 20. When I was 19 and 20, I realized that my mind was going to bad places because I cared way too much about what other people thought of me. I had this kind of friend group that they're the kind of friends that you get along with on a superficial level, but as soon as you want to speak a little bit deeper with them, it's very uncomfortable for them. And so you might tell I'm not that kind of guy. I love having deep friendships. I love having friends that are loyal and friends who you know well. So this kind of superficial friendship wasn't cutting it for me, and I realized that I didn't feel safe around these people. I didn't feel comfortable, and I could never be vulnerable with them. So it gave me a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety to think, what do these people even think of me? And then, because I would notice that my mental health would improve drastically when I left the house. When I was outside, it was just night and day, way better. I realized that, these friends I need to ditch. So, you hear about cutting toxic people out of your life like it's a cliche these days, but that's essentially what I did when I was 20, 21. I found new friends. I found friends I could relate to on a deeper level and speak openly with. And that was my recovery. When I was 21, 22, I got much better. I essentially developed an individualistic morality. So before I was all about the group. Like I cared about who I was inside this group. Mm-hmm. I cared if I was cool or not in the group, and whatever the group did, I would do, and whatever the group thought, I would think. And this kind of herd mentality was dangerous. It was very dangerous to me. And so I started to realize that, like, I should probably have my own set of morals. I should probably have my own internal compass to follow. So I started to develop it around that age. Yeah. A little late, but it happened.
There are people that are 30, 40 years old that are still probably experiencing the same thing. So it's easy to get caught up in the numbers, but I don't think they matter at all. Is there anything you did? Is there anything you did proactively? I mean, education is a big thing. We talked about it earlier. Is that one of the factors that helped you get through that moment?
I won't say education.
I don't mean institutional, by the way. I don't mean like education via university. I mean learning.
No, I have always been an active guy. I've always been exercising. I've always been trying to sleep and eat well. I suppose my introduction to meditation came around that time. But it truly was my social circle. So just like how I speak with my addictions patients, like, you are your social circle. So if you live around other addicts, and if that's who you are with, that's who you're with all day, then you're going to be one of them. So if you improve your social circle and you put yourself in situations with people that you admire, then you're going to be a more admirable person in the future.
So you stepped outside. That's what I'm saying. Like, you left that group. Was it hard to leave the group, though? Was it difficult?
I mean, it was, the way I saw it was really like, it was not exactly life or death, but it was quite like, I got to get out of this. Like, this is obviously terrible. Like, I got to leave. And because, like I said, we didn't have very deep friendships, no, it was not that hard to leave. Not that hard to leave. Yeah.
But that's good to know. I mean, your experiences, or at least the experience that you're talking about here, is a little bit different than what everyone else has expressed so far. So it's good to hear, especially from someone who's overcome situations and become professional in their industry. So I guess we'll leave it on that note. And I just want to thank you as my friend, as someone in the industry, taking their time to speak about this and educate a little bit the people that are watching. I appreciate it a lot, and I send you my best energy all the way from Auckland to Toronto. Say hi to your dad for me, say hi to your sisters, and I hope everything is going well, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
No problem. We'll speak again soon, Lothar.
Sounds good. Take care, man.